The night was silent when the small exploration ship landed on the forgotten planet. Its engines cooled down with a low hiss, echoing across a wide valley of broken stone and shadow. The crew stepped out, their boots sinking into layers of dust that had not been disturbed for decades. Before them stretched the ruins of a once proud military base, its tall towers snapped in half, its steel walls rusted, and its gates torn apart by something far stronger than time. The place was supposed to be empty, nothing but metal skeletons and fading memories, yet the moment they walked onto the cracked yard, an uneasy feeling settled in their bones. The air was too still, as if the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to notice what it had been hiding. Their lights cut across the darkness, sweeping over piles of rubble and collapsed hangars. At first there was only silence, only the crunch of their steps, but then one explorer knelt and froze. His gloved hand brushed against the ground and traced a mark, deep, sharp, and wide. Not a crack, not a tool mark. A claw mark. The team gathered quickly, their voices low but trembling with excitement and fear. The mark was old but far too large to belong to any animal recorded on this planet. As they examined it, they found more. Long scars dragged across the dirt, circling the yard as if something had been pacing here long ago. Some were so deep they looked like the ground had been struck by blades the size of ships. The leader of the group whispered that the base had been abandoned during a secret war, and many believed the enemy never truly left. Perhaps machines, perhaps something worse. He told the crew to stay calm, but even as he spoke, a faint sound reached their ears. It was soft at first, like wind sliding through broken pipes, but the longer they stood, the clearer it became. A slow, steady rhythm. In, out, breathing. The crew's lights swung toward the far edge of the yard, where half-collapsed walls leaned against each other like broken bones. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the ground gave a faint shiver beneath their boots, almost like a heartbeat. Dust drifted down from the broken wall, and the breathing sound grew louder, deep enough to shake their chests. One explorer dropped his scanner in shock as the machine suddenly crackled and went dark. Another's wrist light blinked, glitched, and died. Their systems were failing one by one as though something unseen was pushing against them. Panic spread quickly, but the leader raised his hand for silence. They had come too far to turn back. He told them to bring the floodlights from the ship. Within minutes, powerful beams tore into the shadows, chasing away the darkness that clung to the ruins. The light revealed something buried under vines and debris at the center of the yard. What looked at first like a pile of collapsed steel was actually shaped too carefully, too naturally. Smooth curves, sharp ridges, lines that were not made by machines. And then, two golden eyes opened in the middle of it. The crew froze. The eyes were enormous, glowing like molten metal, and they blinked slowly as if waking from a dream that had lasted for centuries. A wave of hot air rolled across the yard as the hidden mass shifted, pushing aside rubble like it was made of paper. Dust shot into the air, and the explorers staggered back, choking on the weight of the moment. From beneath the broken yard rose a head as large as a vehicle, scales dulled with age but still carrying a metallic shine that caught the floodlight beams. It was no machine. It was alive. The head lifted higher, followed by a long neck scarred with lines of battle. A low rumble, deeper than thunder, rolled out of its throat. The explorers finally understood the claw marks. They understood the breathing. And they understood why the base had been abandoned. It was not empty at all. Something had been left behind, something ancient, something powerful, something that had been waiting all these years in the shadows of a forgotten yard. The explorers stood frozen where they were, their floodlights still shaking in their hands as the creature slowly pulled itself from under the rubble. The ground trembled with every movement, cracks spreading across the old concrete yard. No one spoke, no one dared to move, as two giant wings stretched outward, though one was torn and half broken, dragging against the ground with a scraping sound. The air filled with the smell of dust, rust, and something older, something that carried the weight of ages. The creature lowered its head and fixed its glowing golden eyes on the humans, and for a long moment it seemed to study them, its gaze heavy, like it could see through their armor and into their hearts. The explorers expected it to roar, to strike, to breathe fire and reduce them all to ashes, but instead, what came from its mouth was something far stranger. A voice. It was deep, rough, almost like stone grinding against stone, yet it carried words that every one of them understood. "Humans," the dragon said, its tone filled with both weariness and command, "after all these years, you return. The crew gasped. Their leader stepped forward, though his knees felt weak, his voice caught in his throat. He managed to ask how such a creature could still be alive after centuries. The dragon's chest rose and fell, and a sound rumbled from deep within it, something between a sigh and a growl. "I was left behind," it said. "Left to guard what must not be touched." The explorers exchanged nervous glances. Their mission had been simple: investigate the ruins, map the old base, and report back. Nothing had ever mentioned a dragon, an actual living dragon, being here. One of the younger explorers whispered that it had to be some kind of alien, some species that resembled the myths of Earth. But the dragon's golden eyes turned toward him as if it had heard the thought itself. "I know your myths," it said slowly, "for it was your kind that gave me this name. Dragon. Guardian. Prisoner." The word prisoner struck them like a blade. The leader raised his light higher, scanning the ground, and noticed for the first time the huge broken chains half buried in dirt around the yard. They were thick as tree trunks, old metal covered in rust, but their shape was clear. Once, they had been bound around the creature. The crew felt a chill deeper than the cold night air. Who had chained it here? And for what reason? The dragon's gaze moved past them, sweeping over the ruins of the base. Long ago, it rumbled, this place was not a ruin. It was full of fire, full of noise. Men and machines came, built walls, weapons, and fear. They called it progress. But they feared what they could not control. Its eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. "So they chained me. To guard their secret. To keep it buried." The explorers leaned closer without realizing it. Their curiosity burned as strongly as their fear. One of them finally asked, voice trembling, "What secret?" The dragon did not answer at once. Instead, it lowered its massive head until it was close enough that they could feel its hot breath washing over them. "Beneath your feet," it said, "the earth holds something not meant for mortal hands. A weapon, or perhaps a curse. I was sworn to guard it, even as centuries turned me into stone and ash. I was left alone, forgotten, but I never abandoned my duty." The crew's leader felt the weight of those words pressing against him, but greed and ambition stirred among the others. A hidden weapon buried beneath the base could change everything for them. It could make them powerful, rich, untouchable. One man whispered that if they could find it, they would never need to obey anyone again. The dragon's head snapped toward him, and the rumble that came from its chest this time was no sigh. It was a warning growl, sharp enough to shake dust from the walls. "Do not think such thoughts," it thundered. "The weapon below does not serve man or beast. It only serves ruin." The explorers stepped back, their fear returning. Yet still, the seed of temptation had been planted. They could feel the weight of the dragon's warning, but they could also feel the pull of the mystery. One of them asked, almost in defiance, why the dragon was still alive, why it had not died in all these years if it had been left to guard alone. The dragon's eyes softened for a brief moment, and there was a flicker of sadness across its scarred face. "Because," it said, "my oath binds me as tightly as any chain. Until the weapon is lost, or I am no more, I cannot leave this place. My body grows weaker, but my will keeps me alive." The explorers fell silent. The night pressed down on them, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the dragon's breathing, slow and steady, like the earth itself. They realized this was no ordinary ruin. This was not just another mission. They had stepped into something far greater, something buried in time and shadow. And the dragon, scarred and weary, was both their guide and their warning. Yet even as they stood in silence, even as they felt the fear settle into their bones, there was one thought none of them could escape. If the dragon was guarding something powerful enough to bind him for centuries, then perhaps the secret under the yard was not only dangerous, it was worth the risk. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter in the pale light, and the explorers could feel the weight of its words echoing in their minds. The air inside the ruined yard grew heavy, charged, as though the ground itself did not welcome their presence. The crew huddled together, uncertain whether to flee or to stay. Their leader, trying to keep his voice steady, asked the ancient beast what exactly lay buried beneath the soil of the base. The dragon lowered its head, its scales creaking softly as if every movement was a burden. "A creation of men," it said slowly, "but not of wisdom. They built a machine that thinks without heart, that kills without end. They called it salvation. I call it hunger. The explorers shifted uneasily, the shadows dancing across their visors. The youngest among them shook his head, whispering that it could not be true. A weapon like that would have been recorded, remembered, warned against. Yet here, in this forgotten place, there was no record at all. And that silence itself was the warning. The dragon's voice dropped to a low growl. I begged them to destroy it. They refused. So I swore an oath to guard it, to keep the galaxy safe from their pride. They left me chained here, to rot with their secret. The explorers looked again at the broken chains, half buried in the cracked ground. None of them doubted now that the dragon's story was true. Still, curiosity burned stronger than fear. If such a weapon truly existed, what power might it hold? What fortune, what glory, what victory over any enemy? The leader knew he should order his team to retreat, to leave before temptation led them too far, yet his tongue felt heavy. The silence stretched until one of the crew, a man whose greed often overpowered his reason, spoke with trembling excitement. If the weapon is still here, then it must be ours to find. Why leave it buried when it could save us, protect us, make us stronger? The dragon's massive head turned toward him, its golden eyes burning like suns. The beast's voice thundered across the yard, shaking loose bits of rubble from the walls. Do you not hear me? This weapon does not serve you. It devours. It corrupts. It cannot be held, only unleashed. And once unleashed, there is no chain that can bind it again. The greedy man lowered his gaze, but the idea had already taken root in the hearts of some. The others whispered, doubt twisting their thoughts. What if the dragon was lying? What if the creature only wished to keep the weapon for itself? Why would it guard something it claimed to hate unless it had a reason to deceive them? Suspicion spread like fire through dry grass. The leader felt control slipping through his fingers. He ordered the team to remain calm, but unease was already splitting them apart. The dragon, sensing their struggle, let out a sound that was half sigh, half roar. You are the same as those before you, it said, sorrow thick in its voice. You cannot see beyond your hunger. You do not hear the warning until it is too late. The explorers stood in tense silence. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint metallic smell of old machines buried deep underground. One of the scanners still working on the edge of the yard crackled, its screen flickering with strange signals, energy spikes that pulsed like a heartbeat. The crew hurried over, watching the lines dance wildly across the display. Something beneath the surface was stirring. The dragon's great head rose, and for the first time a hint of fear glimmered in its ancient eyes. You have woken it, the beast whispered, almost to itself. Your presence has stirred its dreams. The explorers' stomachs tightened. They had touched nothing, opened nothing, yet the base itself seemed to respond to them. The ground shuddered faintly, dust drifting down like snow. A deep hum rose from below, steady and cold. The dragon spread its broken wings wide, casting the yard into shadow. Listen well, it said, its voice carrying the weight of centuries. Leave this place before it fully wakes. Once it rises, there will be no power left to stop it, not mine, not yours, not even the stars themselves. The leader clenched his fists. He wanted to order a retreat, to drag his crew back to the ship and vanish into the sky, but he could see the fire in their eyes. Some were afraid, but others were restless, pulled by the lure of discovery and power. The greedy man spoke again, louder this time, his voice echoing across the ruined yard. We cannot leave without knowing. If such a weapon exists, we must see it. We must. The dragon roared, a deafening sound that shook the earth itself. The explorers fell to their knees, clutching their helmets as the sound rattled their bones. Flames flickered between the dragon's teeth, and for the first time they felt the heat of its anger. When the roar faded, its voice dropped to a whisper, soft but heavy as a storm cloud. Then you will doom yourselves. You will doom us all. The ground trembled again, stronger this time. From somewhere deep beneath the cracked yard came a faint metallic screech, like ancient doors grinding open after centuries of rust. The dragon's eyes widened, not in rage but in sorrow. It had kept its oath for so long, fought against time itself to hold the secret down. But now, because of human hands and human hunger, the secret was stirring. And if it woke fully, not even an elder dragon could hold it back. The explorers stared at one another, torn between fear and fascination. The choice stood before them: leave with their lives and their ignorance, or stay and uncover what the galaxy had tried to bury. And as the rumble beneath their feet grew louder, it seemed the decision might no longer be theirs to make. The night deepened over the ruined base, but no one in the yard dared to look at the stars. All eyes were fixed on the ground, where the cracks had begun to widen, glowing faintly with an orange-red shimmer, like fire buried under the earth. The explorers huddled close together, their helmets reflecting the strange light, their breathing sharp and shallow. The dragon's golden eyes glowed like twin lanterns as it loomed over them, wings stretched wide despite their torn edges. "You should not have come here," it rumbled, the words vibrating through the ground. "Your presence has stirred what should have been left in eternal silence." The leader of the team raised his hand, trying to steady his crew, but already panic was creeping into their voices. Some begged to return to the ship, to leave the base before the cracks swallowed them whole. Others whispered of the weapon hidden below, saying this was their chance to claim what no one else had dared to touch. Their debate was cut short when the ground shuddered violently, throwing them to their knees. The broken yard split further, dust rising into the cold air as the orange glow brightened. Then, a sound echoed from below, metal grinding against metal, like giant gears turning after centuries of rest. It was followed by another sound, colder and sharper, a mechanical screech that stabbed into their ears. One explorer clutched his helmet and cried out, saying it felt like the noise was clawing at his mind. The dragon lowered its head close to the cracks, its nostrils flaring as if it could smell what was waking. A growl rippled through its throat, deep and full of ancient anger. "They are rising," it said. "The shadows you call machines. Once they were built as soldiers, but they have no masters, no hearts. They will not stop until all life before them is ash." The greedy man from the crew shook his head furiously. His voice trembled, but his hunger for power burned hotter than his fear. "Machines can be controlled," he shouted. "If we bring them back, they can serve us, protect us, make us rulers of the stars." The dragon's roar thundered in answer, so loud it shattered loose steel beams around the yard and sent a rain of rubble crashing to the ground. The explorers covered their heads, terrified, but the greedy man still glared at the beast. "You want to scare us away," he spat. "You want the weapon for yourself." But before the dragon could answer, the ground split open with a sound like tearing stone. A fissure tore across the center of the yard, wide and jagged, glowing with molten light. From the darkness below rose a shape that froze every human heart in terror. It was a machine, but nothing like the sleek designs of modern ships or drones. This was older, rougher, built for war and nothing else. Its body was armored in thick black plates, scarred with centuries of decay, yet its movements were smooth, predatory. 6 long legs carried it out of the pit, each ending in talons sharp enough to slice steel. Its head was nothing more than a jagged shell of metal with a single burning red eye at the center, glowing like a wound that would never heal. The dragon bared its teeth and flames leaked from its jaws. "Back!" it roared. "This is only the first. More will follow." The explorers scrambled, their lights shaking wildly as they tried to retreat, but the greedy man stepped forward, his eyes wide with a strange fascination. "Magnificent," he whispered. "Think of what we could do with an army of these." The machine's red eye locked onto him, and in an instant it moved, faster than anything so heavy had a right to move. Its talons struck the ground where he had stood a heartbeat before, throwing sparks and sending cracks through the yard. The man screamed, stumbling back toward the others. The leader grabbed him and dragged him away, but the machine's head turned, its eye glowing brighter, focusing on all of them. The dragon lunged forward with a roar, flames erupting from its mouth and washing over the machine. The yard blazed with light as fire met steel. For a moment, it seemed the flames would consume the monster, but when the smoke cleared, the machine still stood. Its armor glowed red-hot, but it did not fall. Instead, it let out a screech so loud it made the explorers collapse, clutching their ears in agony. Sparks of red light erupted in the fissure behind it, like stars being born in the pit. More shapes stirred below, more machines waking from their endless slumber. The dragon reared back, wings spread, its ancient body trembling with the effort. "You must leave," it roared. "Leave now before the swarm rises. I can hold them, but not forever." The explorers hesitated, torn between fear and duty, between the safety of escape and the guilt of abandoning the dragon to fight alone. The greedy man shouted again, urging them to stay, to take control of the machines before it was too late. But even he could not deny the terror building beneath their feet as more red eyes began to glow in the darkness. The leader finally made the choice. He ordered his crew to fall back, to run to the ship, but his words were almost drowned out by the dragon's next roar as it hurled itself at the machine. Fire lit the night, and steel claws slashed through the air. The explorers fled through the ruins, the ground shaking beneath their boots, the sound of battle booming behind them. Yet as they ran, one thought burned in every mind. The dragon was right. This was only the beginning. And if the machines truly rose from their grave, the galaxy would never be the same again. Flames rolled across the ruined yard as the dragon unleashed its fury, the night sky blazing orange against the black steel of the machines rising from below. The first of the war drones shrieked in a voice like tearing metal, its talons glowing red from the dragon's fire. It lunged forward, striking with mechanical speed, but the dragon's tail swept out like a whip, smashing the creature into a wall of concrete that crumbled on impact. Dust and sparks flew, but before the beast could even draw breath again, more red eyes lit up in the fissure. 1 became 3. 3 became 5. Soon, the pit below was crawling with shadows, all dragging themselves out of the earth on steel claws. The explorers stood frozen at the edge of the ruins, torn between terror and awe, as the ground shook with every new arrival. The dragon roared at them without looking back. Go! Leave this place before you are swallowed whole. Its voice thundered like a storm, but its body trembled. Age weighed on its scarred wings, its breaths came harsh and uneven, and blood gleamed where sharp metal claws had already torn its scales. Still, the beast stood tall, every muscle burning with purpose. This was not just a fight. This was a promise. The leader of the explorers grabbed his crew and pulled them back, urging them toward the ship. But the greedy man broke free, his eyes wide, his voice frantic. No. Don't you see? This is our chance. If we can capture just one of them, just one, we could control the rest. We could rule entire worlds. His shouts echoed across the broken base, but no one listened. The others dragged him away as the dragon met the charge of 3 machines at once. The yard exploded into chaos. Fire and steel clashed, and sparks lit the night like falling stars. One drone leapt onto the dragon's back, stabbing with its talons. The beast roared in pain, rolling onto its side and crushing the machine beneath its massive weight, shattering its armor. Another lunged low, aiming for its legs, but the dragon's jaws clamped down with a crunch of metal and fire, ripping the creature apart. Yet for every drone that fell, 2 more climbed from the glowing fissure, their red eyes burning brighter, their shrieks piercing the air. The explorers stumbled through the ruins, hearts pounding as the thunder of battle shook the earth. The leader risked one last glance back and saw a sight he would never forget, the dragon, blooded and scarred, standing against an army alone. Its flames lit the sky, but its body faltered under the endless weight of the machines. It knew it could not win. But it could buy time. Time for the humans to escape. Time to keep the swarm contained for one more night. The dragon's wings spread wide, the torn membranes glowing with fire from within. With a roar that shook the stars, it leapt into the air, soaring above the yard for the first time in centuries. The machines below screeched in fury, their red eyes turning upward as they fired bolts of searing energy. Beams of crimson light tore through the sky, but the dragon twisted and dove, flames pouring from its throat. It rained fire upon the fissure, sealing part of it in molten rock. Machines burned, their metal bodies glowing white-hot before collapsing into ash and slag. For a heartbeat, it seemed the dragon might hold them back. The explorers paused on the edge of the ruins, breathless with hope. But then, a massive shape rose from the fissure, a war drone far larger than the rest, its body armored in plates of black steel thicker than any weapon could pierce. Its red eye burned brighter than the others, and as it emerged, the smaller drones bent low, almost bowing to their towering leader. The dragon turned in the air, eyes narrowing. It had fought armies before, had seen weapons beyond imagining, but this one carried a presence that chilled even its ancient blood. The giant machine raised one claw and fired a beam of red light into the sky. It struck the dragon's wing, tearing a hole through the fragile membrane. The beast cried out and dropped, slamming into the ground with a thunderous crash that shook the ruins. Dust and fire filled the air. The explorers cried out in horror as the dragon struggled to rise again, one wing torn, its body bleeding, but still it stood. Its golden eyes blazed brighter than ever, not with fear, but with defiance. The massive machine stalked forward, the ground trembling under its weight. The swarm followed, their red eyes glowing like embers in the night. The dragon drew in one last deep breath, fire swirling in its chest. Its voice rumbled low, carrying across the ruins. If I must fall, I will fall as a guardian. Then it unleashed everything it had. Fire erupted from its jaws in a torrent, brighter and hotter than the sun, engulfing the swarm in an inferno. Machines melted, claws softened, red eyes burst into sparks. The massive leader staggered under the flames, its armor glowing like molten rock. The dragon roared, pushing forward even as its body gave way, even as the fire inside it consumed the last of its strength. The explorers, far across the yard, shielded their eyes as the ruins became a sea of fire. When the flames faded, silence fell. The smaller drones were gone, reduced to twisted piles of metal. The giant machine still stood, its armor cracked and smoking, its red eye flickering weakly. The dragon collapsed, its body broken, its breath shallow. Still, it raised its head one last time and growled at the surviving machine. The sound was not of victory, nor of surrender. It was a promise that even if it died, its duty would never be forgotten. The explorers wept as they realized the truth. The dragon had given everything to protect them, to protect the galaxy from the swarm. And yet, the battle was not over. The leader knew the dragon's fire had bought them time, but the secret beneath the base was still alive, still waiting. The night was far from finished, and the true cost of what they had awakened was only beginning to reveal itself. The ruins burned with fading firelight, the smell of molten metal thick in the air. The explorers stood together at the edge of the yard, their faces pale, their eyes wide with disbelief. The dragon lay broken in the center of the battlefield, its body rising and falling with ragged breaths. Its scales were cracked, its wings torn, yet its golden eyes still glowed faintly, flickering like dying stars refusing to go out. The massive machine, the leader of the swarm, staggered on the other side. Its armor was split open, smoke pouring from its joints, its red eye struggling to hold its light. The clash between the two titans had ended in ruin, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound of battle. It was the silence of endings. The explorers dared to step closer. Their boots crunched on ash and twisted metal as they moved through the remains of the swarm. The leader held up his hand to stop them when they drew too near. He had seen the way the dragon's eyes still burned. This was no ordinary beast. It had fought for them, bled for them, and now, even in defeat, it carried the weight of guardianship. Slowly, the leader approached alone, lowering his weapon to show he meant no harm. The dragon's gaze shifted, the molten gold fixing on him. When it spoke, its voice was low and cracked, but still powerful enough to rumble in the explorer's bones. "You should not have come here," it whispered. "This base was not abandoned. It was a prison. For them." Its head moved slightly toward the pit where the machines had crawled from, now sealed by scorched rock and collapsed debris. "They are not born of this world. They were built, and once, they broke free. I stayed when your kind fled. I stayed to keep them chained beneath the earth." The leader swallowed hard, his throat dry. "And now we've released them." The dragon's eyes closed for a moment, as if the truth weighed too much. "Yes. But you are not to blame. Time always finds a way to break chains." A violent spark burst from the giant machine across the yard, its cracked body twitching. The explorers raised their weapons in panic, but the dragon only growled weakly. "Leave it. Its time is ending. What matters now is what you choose to do with what you've seen." The leader stepped closer, kneeling beside the dragon's massive head. "Tell me what to do," he said softly. "Tell me how to fight them." The golden eyes opened again, brighter now, as though fire was gathering for one last moment. "You cannot fight them as I did. You are not made for flame and claw. But you are made for each other. Alone, you are fragile. Together, you are infinite. Your kind, humanity, is their answer. Not mine." The dragon's gaze softened, and its voice dropped to a near whisper. "Take what remains of this place. Learn from it. Prepare. Because this swarm, what you've seen here, is only a shadow of what waits beyond the stars." The explorers exchanged fearful glances. Beyond the stars? The thought was too vast, too terrible to hold. The dragon coughed, smoke escaping its jaws, and with great effort, it lifted its head higher. Do not weep for me. My watch is over. But yours has just begun. Its body trembled as it drew in one final breath, and with it came a faint glow, a soft golden shimmer that spread across its scales. The explorers watched in stunned silence as the light lifted from the dragon's body, drifting like sparks into the sky, vanishing into the darkness of the ruined base. The ancient guardian lowered its head to the ground, eyes closing for the last time. The rumble of its breath faded until the night was still once more. The dragon was gone. The leader bowed his head, his chest heavy with grief and awe. The others slowly gathered around, their faces wet with silent tears. None of them spoke. There were no words for what they had witnessed. Only the truth of it burned in their hearts, that they had stood beside something greater than themselves, and it had chosen to protect them. A sharp crack split the air, drawing their attention back to the giant machine. Its red eye flickered violently, then shattered in a burst of sparks. The monstrous frame collapsed in on itself, falling to the ground with a deafening crash that shook the ruins one last time. Then, all was quiet. Only the whisper of cooling flames filled the air. The explorers turned toward their ship. Every step away from the battlefield felt heavy, as if the ground itself tried to hold them there, forcing them to carry the memory of what had been lost. At the edge of the yard, the leader stopped and looked back one final time. The dragon's body lay still, but the glow in the sky above seemed to linger, as though the guardian's spirit had not fully left. "We'll carry your fire," he whispered. "I promise." When they boarded their ship, no one argued about what to do next. They knew. The base, the machines, the dragon's sacrifice, it all pointed to one truth. Humanity could not hide. They could not pretend the galaxy was safe. The swarm was real. And it was coming. As the ship lifted into the sky, the leader set a course not for home, but for the nearest outpost. They would deliver the warning. They would tell the story. And they would prepare. The planet fell away beneath them, its broken yard shrinking into a dot of fire against the endless night. The explorers sat in silence, but their silence was no longer fear. It was a vow. A vow born from golden eyes and fire. A vow that humanity would not run. They would be ready. They had no choice. For out there, somewhere in the cold void beyond the stars, the swarm waited, and now, it knew humanity had awoken.